previous segment of our panel discussion on ethnicity and conflict, we talked about the economic dimension, and in particular the question about whether certain conflicts that are widely viewed as ethnic may actually be economic conflicts in disguise. That segued into a larger discussion of multiculturalism and multicultural societies, which Richard Crisp kicked off.
Taking this now towards the notion of multicultural societies, and how is multiculturalism good? Is diversity a cause of conflict in our societies, or is it a way of achieving intricate harmony? And I think the evidence on this is mixed. So on the one hand, we know that contact between groups is an incredibly powerful way to reduce prejudice. There have been over 500 studies of the contact hypothesis, which shows us that this is the case. There is basic fundamental correlation between intragroup contact and building these kind of familiar relations between groups and tolerance. But on the other hand, it's precisely when, and this comes back to what we were talking about earlier on, it's precisely when groups are in the same proximity or occupying the same space that we see these conflicts erupt and escalate. So how do you square this circle? In terms of policy to try and promote multiculturalism, a valuing of diversity, again, this is not necessarily a simple picture. So we know that trying to promote multiculturalism, getting people to value difference, this can reduce prejudice, but at the same time, it makes group identities salient and makes salient those stereotypes and perhaps negative stereotypes which are part of the problem all along. So you get these kind of dual effects. Coming back to this idea of this kind of conflict of resources, minority groups tend to prefer multicultural policies, but majority groups tend to see them as a threat, and especially if they're high identifiers, high ethnic or national identifiers. So there are real challenges to getting people to embrace the notion of multiculturalism, the notion that we can live in a society that celebrates difference and values.
Well, I mean, based on what you're saying, it sounds to me like one wonders why you would pursue a multicultural policy at all. I mean, is there? Can you address that? I mean, you have sort of been addressing it, but it seems almost like what you're saying seems to argue against multicultural policies.
Well, the opposite of the often cited opposite to multicultural policy is a colorblind policy, where you ignore differences and you pretend that there are no differences between groups. And we know that there's lots of evidence to suggest that just doesn't work. And one of the reasons that doesn't work is because, again, coming back to some of the things we've been discussing, people's identities are important to them. Our identity defines who we are. If I'm in one group and you're in another group, this is important to my definition of my identity. And there's lots of research which shows that in strictly controlled laboratory conditions, if you try and eliminate these bases for identification, even these minimal bases for group membership, which are created in the laboratory, you try and take those away from people, then it's quite hard to do, and people don't want to give up that sense of identity. So in colorblind approaches generally are seen not to be the way forward. And we should be celebrating diversity, and it's not about abandoning multiculturalism as a policy. It's working out how to get it to work and how to get people to value.
Well, that does sort of edge us into into talking about how we address ethnic violence and these kinds of out-group-driven conflict. And I would be curious if people could sort of now talk about what what you would do if you could do one thing, for example, to kind of ameliorate intergroup conflict of this type from the perspective of your science, for example. Maybe Richard, we can just start with you.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we've been arguing is that although there is clearly this kind of evolved system for recognizing outgroups and detecting outgroups and differentiating in-groups and outgroups, And evolutionary theory talks about how was an adaptive mechanism. We've argued that there are also situations from an evolutionary perspective in our ancestral environments where one can imagine it was adapted to put aside these feelings and to try and forge alliances. So not just always to be thinking about us and them, but to actually think of outgroups as potential allies. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, to unite against a common enemy, or to increase the agricultural skills base in one's tribe.
Mm-hmm. So that's in some sense sort of harnessing the similar innate desire to kind of affiliate with people, or to kind of form coalitions with other people in your group.
Absolutely. And we've argued that it's not adaptive to always be detecting differences, but you should have a second system that can kick in to override those differences when it's adaptive to do so. So alongside that, this us versus them mechanism, which we know is adaptive in many respects, we've argued that there is a second mechanism which enables coalition building. And we know that there are situations in which this is triggered. So, for instance, when this kind of us versus them criteria doesn't seem to fit. So, for instance, when you encounter a member of the outgroup, but they act in a counter-stereotypical way, or they act in a very positive way, which you're not expecting because they're an outgroup member, then we see that people shift the mode of thinking. They shift out of these kind of heuristic us versus them ways of thinking and into more in-depth ways of trying to analyse what's going on, what's happening with this outgroup member. And
Mahzarin, would you care to comment on that?
Well, Richard is absolutely right that no matter how far back we go into our evolutionary history, it is clear that while we have to be highly sensitive to who was in and out, we also have to be ready to form coalitions with groups of people who were not originally us. Okay? But we're having to do that now on a scale that we've never done before. So it is true that 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, that we largely lived amongst people who were genetically identical to us. On the other side of a mountain were people who were genetically identical but made a different grunting noise. And when we looked at them and they looked at us, there was this question of, am I going to be the one who will live tomorrow, or will they? But now we look at people who are absolutely different from us, people who have genetically nothing in common with us, people who are socioculturally quite alien to us, and we have to look at them and say, should I outsource to this group? Can I collaborate with them and beat somebody who's just like me genetically? So this is a mandate that our modern world places that is absolutely not one that our ancestors had to ever deal with. So I'm going to argue that a preference for things multicultural, a preference for diversity, is not a natural taste. It is like drinking single malt scotch for the first time when you're age 13 and you steal some from your parents. You don't understand why adults do this. Right? But it is an acquired taste, single malt scotch, as is a preference for diversity. And that the two system thing, the knack perhaps, and I think over time, what used to be the foreign or alien response to difference becomes the default response. And you can see this. Why is it that in most countries in the world, people who live along the waterways tend to be more open to difference? Okay? Yeah. Probably because strange people came from other parts of the world with their wares to sell them, and you became friends with them. And even though that doesn't happen anymore, commerce isn't necessarily along waterways anymore, it now is the case that people who think that way live in those parts of the world, and they have a sense that what is different or what is strange is actually attractive. Okay? That again, the reason I think the species still remains on the planet is because we have both of these. We are naturally and in some ways sensitive to what might be different, but we know that going along these old lines of using that difference to make alliances simply isn't right. If we had used a simple rule of similarity and difference, we would not be here today.